Dr. Morris holds a PhD in philosophy and religion from Yale University and taught for 15 years at the University of Notre Dame. He left there to found the Morris Institute for Human Values. A celebrated author, he's written more than 20 books, including If Aristotle Ran General Motors, something Aristotle might not want to be doing this week. Dr. Morris also wrote True Success, The Stoic Art of Living, and other books that are available over on the table. He is known for bringing the wisdom of the past into the challenges of today. He serves as an advisor, consultant, and philosopher to some of the nation's largest corporations. The President's Scholars, some of whom you met this morning, they were some of the students who led you to your tables, have just finished reading Dr. Morris's book, The Art of Achievement, in a leadership course I teach at Fresno Pacific University. The thesis of that book is the focus of Dr. Morris's presentation this morning. Please help me welcome Dr. Tom Morris.
Thanks a lot. Everywhere I go in this country, I am seeing something I have never seen before. They didn't prepare me for this in all my years of graduate school at Yale and all my 15 years of teaching at Notre Dame. Nobody said, at the turn of the century, the change of the millennium, all across America, in every walk of life, people are going to start becoming philosophers. People are asking suddenly deep and challenging questions about things they've long taken for granted. What is true success? How can I have more fulfillment in my work? How can I get more balance in my life? You know, what's my legacy in this world supposed to be? I'm being asked these questions. It's not just the baby boomers having midlife crisis all at the same time. I'm being asked these questions by people in their 70s, people in their 80s, people in their 20s and 30s. Everywhere I go across the country. It's just started a few years ago. As a matter of fact, do you remember the Australian Olympics several years ago? The night before the Olympics started in Australia, I got a telephone call live from Australian National Radio. Professor Morris, why are the biggest companies in America suddenly turning to you, a philosopher? Why are all Americans becoming philosophers? I said, I'm not sure. Maybe Winston Churchill once explained it when he said, you can always depend on Americans to do the right thing once they've exhausted every other possibility. Having tried everything else, people are turning to ancient wisdom. We're going to take a little time this morning and turn to some of the greatest ancient wisdom there is on the topic of true success. Now, this is one of my favorite topics to speak on all over the world, and I've got to tell you, I remember vividly the first time I was ever asked to speak on the topic. It was 20 years ago at Notre Dame. I was sitting in my office doing what a philosopher does. I was thinking. I got a phone call from a big group of really successful people asking me to come and speak to them on the topic of success. I had no idea why they were calling me. I didn't teach on it at Notre Dame. I hadn't written a book on it at that time. But these were really successful people. I thought my wife would be proud of me. I'd go home and tell her. And philosophers have absolutely no schedule whatsoever. So I jumped up from my desk. I went running out the door of my office. The phone rang again. I jumped back, picked it up. By some cosmic coincidence, it was a publishing company asking me would I consider writing a book on success, the very same topic. I ran to the Notre Dame football stadium where I parked my car. I drove the 2 miles home. I came bursting through the front door. I said to my wife, Mary, you won't believe it. Within 60 seconds, I just got 2 phone calls. A group of really successful people want me to speak to them on success. A publisher wants me to write a book on success. I thought she was going to glow with pride. She just looked real confused. She said, wait, don't you have to be a success before you can speak and write on it? I said, hey, I'm not going to get hung up on a technicality. I'm a student of the wisest people who've ever lived. I'm going back to Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the folks y'all named. I'm going to go through the centuries across the cultures and ask a question. Is there a universal framework for success, recognized by the wisest people in every culture, and secondly, applicable to every facet of our lives? You all, I read hundreds of books, thousands of essays, the most research I'd ever done on any topic. I was absolutely stunned to discover there are just 7 utterly universal conditions for success. I brought everybody a little gift this morning, a little laminated wallet card you'll find on your place setting somewhere. On one side of that card are the 7 universal conditions for success that are going to structure our brief time together this morning. I call them the 7 C's of success for reasons that will be obvious if you glance at your card. The first one comes to us from Aristotle. Aristotle used archery terminology. The Greek word was telos, bullseye. Every human being needs a target to shoot at. In every situation, in every relationship, in any endeavor, with any new challenge or opportunity, we need first and foremost a clear conception of what we want. We need a vivid vision. We need a goal clearly imagined. And when I say a clear conception of what we want, I don't necessarily mean what we want to get out of the situation. What we want to see happen is the result of our energies and our time. We need a clear conception. Too many people have only the vaguest ideas about their lives. It's really astonishing to me. I mean, did you hear the actress Lily Tomlin say a few years ago, "I always wanted to be somebody. I should have been more specific." I mean, I love that because that captures the way so many people think and feel. My son's 25, my daughter's 27. So many of their friends, they want to be somebody. They want to do something. What? They have no clue. Vague thoughts cannot motivate specific behavior. One of my favorite first century philosophers, Seneca, once said, "No wind blows fair for a ship that has no port." I've always loved that image. No wind blows fair for a ship that has no port. If we don't know where we're going, we can't take advantage of the things that cross our path along the way. So first of all, have a clear conception of what you want to see happen. Have a clear idea of where you're going. You know, motivational speakers for 50 years have been talking about having goals, as if it's very important for everybody to have goals, almost as if it doesn't matter what they are as long as you have some. The great philosophers thought it mattered deeply what our goals are. So I decided to bring you all this morning the single greatest piece of advice ever given for powerful goal setting. Maybe about the most famous piece of advice any human being ever gave another human being. It's the shortest. It could be the most profound, and it might even be the toughest. You know, it was first said by Thales, then by Socrates, then by Plato, then by Aristotle. It was so important, it was inscribed in marble at the holiest spot in ancient Greece. With one voice, the ancient philosophers said, whatever you're doing, whatever you're seeking to do, job number 1 is always the same. Know thyself. Know thyself. You wouldn't believe how many presidents of companies come to me on a regular basis. "Tom, I don't know what's going on. We're reading the best practices literature, books like Good to Great, Built to Last, In Search of Excellence, The Discipline of Market Leaders, Execution. We transplanted some of these practices into our business, and they didn't work." They transplanted, they didn't translate. They didn't filter through the grid of self-knowledge. Who are we? What's our position? What's our history? Who are our people? What are our strengths? It's often been said that self-knowledge is one of the greatest sources of power in this world. On an individual level, what do I like? What do I not like so much? What are my talents? What are my experiences? How can I take some initiative now to make a difference in the world? Self-knowledge is a great source. Every exercise in goal setting should be an exercise in self-knowledge. What is right for me? Well, I decided I'd bring y'all also the second greatest piece of advice ever given for powerful goal setting. Not as widely understood in the ancient world, but even more important now than it was then. The great philosopher said, do not allow what is very good to keep you from what is best. Now, this is so important, I decided to draw a little picture to illustrate it. Imagine you're out in the woods on a hike. Let's make it even more interesting. You're leading a group of other people. And let's say that from where you stay, let's say you set as a goal to get to the highest point in the area from which you'll be able to survey all the surrounding terrain. And imagine that from where you are, the highest point you can see is Hill A. Whether it's fog, whether it's perspective, whatever it is, you want to get to the highest point in the area. It looks like it's Hill A, so you climb Hill A. You slip and you fall and you struggle and you pick each other up, and finally you get to the summit. from which vantage point you can now see the much higher Hill B. Now let me ask y'all a question. If your goal is to get to the highest point in the area and you now stand perched atop Hill A, what's the very first thing you're going to have to do to attain your true goal? Anybody? Go downhill. Go downhill. And what's everybody going to say when you as leaders suggest this? Don't we all know? What do you mean we have to go downhill? It took us a long time to get up here. Hill A is very good. We can see a lot from Hill A. There are so many businesses. There are so many offices, so many individuals, so many families stuck on top of Hill A because nobody wants to go downhill. What does that metaphorically represent? Changing what you've most recently been doing. The great philosophers said, hey, you get to Hill A, throw a party, have a celebration. Set up camp if you like, but let it be your base camp for your next ascent up the next highest hill. Life is supposed to be a series of adventures. Be bold, be daring, do not become stagnant, do not allow what is very good to keep you from what is best. Now, at this point, you might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, a philosopher is talking to us about success. Obviously, success is something in the outer world. So far, we're just talking about inner things. A clear conception of what we want, a vivid vision. We're talking about self-knowledge. We're talking about this inner boldness to be adventurous. What's the relationship in this world between the inner and the outer? I was with a bunch of insurance executives not long ago in Florida. My plane was delayed. I was late getting to the Miami airport. A car service picked me up and took me to the hotel where I was going to be speaking in 15 minutes. I mean, it had never been cut this close before. So I'm running into the hotel. 4 guys are coming off the golf course, and one of them recognizes me from a poster. And he says, Professor, you got to come over here. I got to tell you what just happened. And I ran across the lobby and I said, what do you mean? What just happened? And he said, I know you're on in just a second. I'll be really quick. He said, I got to tell you what just happened. He said, the 4 of us, he points to his 3 friends, we have a pact amongst ourselves. Everywhere we go in this country for a meeting, we play a few holes of golf before we go into the meeting room. We've done this for like 10 years. This morning, you start early, so we had to go on the course really early. It was a Turnberry Club in Aventura, Florida. He said, I got to tell you what this guy just did. He pointed to one of his friends. He said he was the first one up this morning. Before he'll swing a golf club, he stretches every muscle in his body. I don't know if it's yoga. I don't know what he's doing. We said, come on, take your shot. We got to go. He stepped up to the ball. He took his swing, and for the first time in 10 years, this character totally missed the ball. The 3 of us just stared at him, and he looked back at us and he said, whoa, tough course. Ain't that the human condition? I said, you nailed it. I said, thank you so much for telling me that. You're absolutely right. We live in a world in which everybody's yelling tough course. What's the economy going to do next? You know, what about world terrorism? What about the election? What about this? What about that? Everybody's yelling tough course, except the great philosophers who were people who said to a person, it's not the course that really matters. It's what we bring to the course each and every day that ultimately prevails. Bring, first of all, a clear conception of what you want to see happen, a vivid vision, a goal clearly imagined. And number 2, in the ancient world, Cicero once said, in this life, attitude is almost everything. We need an attitude of confidence. We need a strong confidence that we can attain our goal. Now, let me take you back. Let's don't go back to ancient Rome. Let me take you back 100 years to my favorite American philosopher of the time, William James. William James, Harvard University, psychology and philosophy professor. William James noticed something that you and I have noticed. Look at all the things we call sports. Rowing, running, canoeing, mountain climbing, basketball, baseball. The activities are so different, and yet we have one word, sports. He said these different activities all have champions. All sports have champions. I wonder if despite the differences in the things they do, all champions have any set of characteristics in common. Is there an essence of championship level endeavor? James studied every champion athlete of his day, and he said, I think there's one thing. I think there's one thing that every champion shares in common with every other champion. I don't even think we have a word for it in the English language. So he coined a term from Latin the term precursive faith. Cursive, to run, pre, ahead of. Faith that runs ahead of the evidence. Now, here's the insight. Every champion is regularly challenged to do something they've never done before. Wrestle a new opponent, climb a new mountain, break a new world's record. If they just look in their past history of accomplishments and ask themselves the question, do I have evidence sufficient to prove I can do this? The answer will always be no. The evidence of the past is always insufficient to prove the success of the future. He said the champions are precisely the people who don't let that hold them back. They run ahead of the evidence, believing in themselves up front, with confidence, with faith. He told a story about a mountain climber, very accomplished climber, who was making a difficult ascent, and he slipped and fell to a ledge. A blizzard was coming on. He dived exposure unless he made a jump that was the longest jump he had ever even contemplated. James said if the man stood there and said to himself, I can't do this. I'll get killed if I even try this jump. I mean, the blizzard's coming. I'll die regardless. There's no way out. This is hopeless. If he engaged in what psychologists now call negative self-talk, he'd be lowering the objective probability of his own success. If he engaged in precursive faith, he'd be raising the objective probability of success. I can make this jump. I can do this jump. This is why I've done all my leg work. This is what I prepared for my whole career. I can do this jump. James said in a famous essay, I'm not saying you can talk yourself into jumping over this building. Obviously, we all have our limits. The exciting truth in life is, he said, we don't come near our limits. He told the story that the mountain climber used precursive faith, made the jump, and lived to talk about it. Now, I remember thinking, have I ever been stuck on the side of a mountain, even metaphorically? Have I ever had to do this? 3 days later, I get a phone call, DDB Needham Advertising, Chicago, Illinois. Professor, we're doing a nationwide search for a philosopher to be the national spokesman for Winnie the Pooh on Disney home videos. I said, really? She said, we've searched the country coast to coast for a philosophy professor with personality, and we can't find one. I thanked her for calling with all the personality I could muster on the phone. I said, why are you calling me? She said, we hear you used to play guitar in rock bands, and you've done all kinds of crazy things, and maybe you're the guy. I said, I love Winnie the Pooh. She said, well, can we come to campus tomorrow morning, Saturday, and get you on video to see if you might be right for network television? I just did a show on ethics for the Learning Channel. Do you have the video? No, it's in Washington. She flies a guy from O'Hare to D.C. that morning to pick up a videotape. He flies back to Chicago that afternoon, gives it to a guy writing TV commercials for Disney. He watches the video, flies to L.A. the next day. He called me and he said, Tom, I showed your video to 5 Disney executives. They came out of the screening room and they said, we like this guy, but is there a problem with his southern accent? The writer of the commercials, who was born in Asheville, North Carolina, said, what accent? So they hired me. They called me Monday and said, you're the man. We're going to fly you to L.A. We're going to make some TV commercials. But I said, really? Yeah, we're going to fly you first class. We're going to put you in a room in Beverly Hills Hotel. We're going to do this, that. I said, look, my family's never been to California. I mean, my family would love this. Can you fly my whole family? No, when I taught at a Catholic university, she said, how many family members are we talking about here? 4 of us. Okay, we'll fly the 4 of you first class. We'll get you a suite of rooms at the hotel in Beverly Hills. We'll pick you up at the airport in a limousine. I said, could it be a white limousine? She said, why do you ask? My daughter, Sarah, who was 10 years old, had seen a white limousine in a Disney movie or something and wanted to be, okay, we got to switch limo companies, but we'll get you a white limo. But listen, stand in your office at Notre Dame this afternoon, take a good camera, roll a 24 film, take a picture of everything in your office. Everything, floor, walls, ceiling. A guy's coming for your film tonight. I said, what's this for? She said, you'll see. A guy rings my doorbell that night. I'm from Disney. I've come for your film. What's this all about? He said, they don't tell me anything. I just got to take this back to L.A. 2 days later, we fly out to Los Angeles. White stretch limo with my kids' favorite snacks. They take us to a room probably 100 times the size of this room. I've never seen a place so big. It's like a cavernous warehouse, airplane hangar. I don't know. It's a sound stage in L.A. All dark. except under spotlights in the very middle. My Notre Dame office in every detail. The mess it had taken me 10 years to make, they had created in 2 days. It was truly impressive. Papers and folders and Diet Coke cans and just stuff everywhere, I said, this is amazing, The difference was, though, my desk at Notre Dame was fake wood. In Hollywood, it was real mahogany. I had a cheap computer. They had top of the line. I had a beat-up electric guitar in the corner of my office. They had a brand new $3,500 Gibson Les Paul guitar in the corner of the office there. I said, do you guys mind if I take 24 pictures of this office and send them back to Notre Dame? I could live like this. Oh, Disney's spending $3 million on this commercial campaign. Really? Yes, and if you'll stand next to your desk while we focus the cameras, we're ready to start. All of a sudden, 75 crew members emerged from the shadows. And I realized right away, they're all looking at me. Suddenly a phrase implanted itself in my brain, the phrase, weak link in the chain. I didn't know how to make a TV commercial. I could blow $3 million. I panicked for 10 seconds until I remembered William James and precursive faith. And I started saying to myself, I can do this. I can do this. I'm in front of students all the time. I can be in front of these cameras. I can do this. 6 hours, the hardest work I think I've ever done in my life. I heard myself saying all day long, no problem, I can do that. That's fine, I can do that. Sure, no, not a problem. Tom, this time, please, can you smile, not with your mouth, but with your eyes? Okay, I can do that. 30 minutes later, I hear a guy say, smiling with the eyes, take 37. 36 failures in a row, and panic in the eyes is not what they were after at that point. James, you tell me I'm supposed to have upfront confidence, initial faith in any new endeavor. Walk into that meeting, go in with confidence. You got to have a difficult conversation. Prepare yourself in advance to feel good, to have faith in what needs to happen. You know what? That day, I learned that, built into the concept of precursive faith, that there's more to it than meets the eye. Yes, we need initial confidence. We need two kinds of confidence. We need that initial confidence, but we also need resilient confidence. Confidence that can take its lumps and keep on going. Y'all know the most successful people in human history have never been people who didn't ever experience failure. They've often been people who failed a lot, but they had a resilience of spirit. They got back up and they tried again. Now, I learned this that day because of my son. He was 8 years old at the time, big baseball fan. I'm glad he was with me because him just being there, it reminded me of another 8-year-old kid, baseball in his hand, bat across his shoulder. He's out in front of his house on the street corner. I'm the greatest baseball player in the world. I am the world's greatest baseball player. He's chanting over and over again. There are other kids around. He's not talking to them. He's just saying this. He looks a little self-conscious, walks down the driveway into his backyard where he thinks nobody can see him or hear him, and he says it again. I am the world's greatest baseball player. Throws the ball up, takes a swing like the golfer, totally misses the ball, reaches down, picks it up again. I am the greatest baseball player. Throws it up, takes a second swing, missed it again. Reaches down and picks it up out of the grass. The greatest, the greatest, the greatest, the greatest. I am the greatest baseball player. Throws it up and takes his third and biggest swing yet. Totally missed it again. At that point, he just looks at the ball lying in the grass. 3 strikes. Wow, what a pitcher. Now that's resilient confidence. I love that. That came into my head that day at Disney. I somehow said, wow, what an actor. I smile with my eyes. I still don't know how to do it, but I somehow did it. The Disney people started laughing. You look just like Jiminy Cricket, whatever that means. It was a wrap. It was 2 TV commercials for Winnie the Pooh. My kids were proud of me. They said, Dad, you're a philosopher. I'd done something they could relate to. My wife said she was so proud of me. She got her favorite new vocabulary word that day. As we were leaving the studio, a guy said to me, oh, Professor, you'll start getting residuals very soon. I didn't know what that even was. I thought I was doing this for free just because I love Winnie the Pooh, just for the experience. I said, what do you mean? He said, every time one of your commercials shows on network television, you get $500. That's like my monthly salary as a philosophy professor. You're kidding, right? No, sir, $500. Wow, we get back to South Bend, they're showing it on the Today Show, the Tonight Show, Bold and Beautiful, Wimbledon. They're showing it 5-6 times a day. In the first 6 weeks, they showed my commercial 159 times on network television. My wife would walk through the room, see my face on TV, and say, cha-ching, let's go to the mall. Thanks to William James and thanks to that kid. You know what the kid was doing? He was living the advice of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. Marcus Aurelius, every night on the battlefield, he had to fight so many battles. He was a peace-loving guy, but he had to fight battle after battle. Every night he asked himself the same question: what have I learned today? Marcus Aurelius believed that if you and I live life with eyes wide open, we're going to learn something every single day. He also believed that if we don't review it and if we don't write it down, we're going to forget it. So he wrote he asked the question every night before he went to sleep, and he wrote down the answer. Now, this is a busy guy. He's emperor of Rome. He doesn't have a lot of time on his hands. He's not writing a treatise every night. He's writing a sentence or 2 sentences or a paragraph. After his death, these little notes on life. You know, we took notes in school. Why not take notes in life? These notes were collected as one of the best-selling books in all of human history ever since then, The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Incredible stuff, incredible stuff. One night, he asked, what have I learned today? He wrote a sentence that's just changed the way I approach everything. The sentence is as simple as it is powerful. He wrote the sentence, your life is what your thoughts make it. Your life is what your thoughts make it. So why not make it great? The power of the mind is incredible. That's what the kid was living. That's what I have learned to live over these years. Give yourself the benefit of a little inner cheerleading as you go through life, as you step up, as you try to make your difference in the world. It's incredible what can happen. Well, you know, let me tell you, the confident people who actually accomplish things, the people who set goals and who have confidence and who really make it work in the world are the people who understand condition number 3. We need to focus concentration on what it takes to reach the goal. You can be a big dreamer, you can have supreme confidence, but unless you focus your concentration on what it takes to reach the goal, you're not going to be able to make it happen. Some of you may have heard our old coach, Lou Holtz, on some occasions speak. He and I have done a lot of talks together for NBC Sports, and I've heard him tell the same story so many times of when he was an assistant coach, he got fired. He had no job, no savings, no investments. He had a family to support. He could have been depressed. Instead of that, he took out some paper, put it on a table, and wrote down goals for my life. One day I want to be head coach at Notre Dame. I want to win a national championship. I want to be invited to the White House. I want to be on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I want to get a hole-in-one in golf. Every big thing he could think of. That day, he set 107 lifetime goals, gigantic things. And you know how we are. He took the list to his wife so she could get a sneak preview of their glorious future together. You know, so she reads all 107 items and says the one thing he would least have expected her to say, Lou, you left out something. Why don't you add, get a job? Don't be afraid to start small. An ancient Chinese proverb says, great oaks grow from tiny acorns. Lou had to learn the wisdom of the Chinese and the wisdom of Zeno, the ancient Greek philosopher who said, well, you know Zeno's paradoxes of motion, very important to mathematicians, very important to philosophers. One lesson we can extract from Zeno's paradoxes, though, interestingly enough, is this: from every start point to every goal, there's a universally best strategy, and that is this: divide, then conquer. If I want to be a certain place a year from now, where do I need to be 6 months from now? How about 3 months from now? How about 1 month from now? What should I be doing this week? Daunting goals can become manageable objectives as we divide and conquer. We need to set intermediate goals and more immediate goals. I mean, before I knew Lou Holtz, before I knew anything about Zeno, I learned this from my best friend in junior high school. He was a tambourine player. I never thought it took any talent at all to play the tambourine until I heard him try. He had no rhythm at all. He would just randomly shake the tambourine and hit it on things, and He was a singer. And I want to promise y'all something. You have never seen an early audition on American Idol that's nearly as bad as my friend Don. He was the worst singer I've ever heard in my life. He was kicked out of a volunteer Baptist church choir. The minister said, "Please serve God some other way." That's how bad he was. He would come to my house every day after school. "Tom, do you want to start a band? Let's start a band. Let's be great musicians together." I was already traveling in soul bands and rock bands. He was pathetic as a musician, but he was my best friend. He would come to my house every day. "Let's start a band. Do you want to start a band? Let's start a band. Let's start a band." It was driving me crazy. I'd say, "Let's just play some today. Let's talk about a band later." I'd plug in my guitar. He'd shake his tambourine. My parents would get out of the house as fast as they possibly could. It was terrible. Day after day, week after week, month after month. The years pass. I go down the road to Chapel Hill for college. He goes across town in our hometown of Durham, North Carolina. He goes to Duke University. And then as a sophomore, do we have any Duke University people here? We're far enough away to be kind of safe, I think. We don't have any Duke University. Good, I can say so then. He did what every good Duke student should do his second year at Duke. He quit. I'm required by law in the state of North Carolina to say that as a Tar Heel. I'm sorry. But he dropped out his sophomore year. You know what he said? "I can't become a great musician in Durham, North Carolina. It's not going to happen here. I got to go to a music city. New York, LA, they're too far. I'm going to Nashville." He set an intermediate goal. "I got to get the money to get there," a more immediate goal. He borrows money from all his friends. We're coughing up money so he can take a bus trip to Nashville, Tennessee. "I got to find a cheap place to sleep." He sleeps in a used car for 6 weeks. "I can't surf to fame and fortune on the tambourine. I better take guitar lessons." He takes guitar lessons. "Maybe I could use voice lessons." Talk about self-knowledge knocking at somebody's door. "Yeah, please, Don, take some voice lessons." He goes to the clubs where the good musicians hang out just to try to meet some of them. He gets a job as janitor in the Vanderbilt Computer Center at night, so that during the day he can go to the music companies and show them the songs he's writing. Little things adding up. 2 years later, I'm up at Yale in New Haven, Connecticut. I get a phone call from a mutual friend. "Tom, listen to this. You won't believe it." He puts on a record. It's a great song, a great singer. He said, "This is our friend Don. He wrote it. He recorded it. It's Capitol Records. That's him singing. It's number 96 on the country charts." I said, "This is just mind-blowing. I mean, I couldn't imagine this." I said, "Well, he focused his concentration on everything it took to realize his dream. When I come home for Christmas next month, I got to go congratulate him." All the old friends would come home for Christmas. "Where's Don? Where's Don?" Nobody knew. Finally, somebody said, "Oh, didn't you hear? He had to stay in Nashville. Everybody's recording his songs." I said, "What do you mean everybody? Who?" "Kenny Rogers is recording one." Now, some of you are old enough to remember in the late 70s, before he started doing other things like roasting chicken, and the last 5 years it's just been plastic surgery full time, I think. But before that, he's the number one singer in the world for a while. I said, "What did Don write that Kenny Rogers is recording?" And my friend said, "Well, I think the name of the song is The Gambler." Anybody remember that? You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. My buddy Don Schlitz, I met a famous guitar player at Opryland Hotel 5 years ago. He said, "Your buddy Don Schlitz is the greatest songwriter in the history of country music." I said, "He's the greatest?" It's still hard for me to process this, I said, "By what standard?" And the guy said, "Top 5 hit songs." How many? 56. Are you kidding? Randy Travis, Tanya Tucker, The Judds, Alabama, Mary Chapin Carpenter. He kept naming the country stars whose hit songs were written by my friend Don. I said, "Really?" He said, "Your buddy Don Schlitz has made so many tens of millions of dollars, he lost count a long time ago." I said, "If that's true, the next time I see him as a philosopher, I've got a question for him. Does he want to start a band?" It's the kind of person you want to be around, a natural master of focused concentration. Now, the philosophers have taught me 2 things. Number one, y'all wouldn't be here today unless you were already pretty good at this. But we can always get better. Divide and conquer. Here's the important lesson, though. Don't assume that the people around you, the people who work for you, even members of your family, friends, clients, don't assume that everybody's a natural master of focused concentration. Sometimes we have to show other people how to divide and conquer. And they can catch on. They can pick it up. They can become really good at it, but don't assume that they know how to do it. Somebody may have done really well in their career, in medicine, in law, in something else, and then you're representing them in financial services or something, and they know where they eventually want to be, but you have to help them see how to break it down. You can apply that to your own business. Sometimes we have to help our clients divide and conquer. Set those intermediate and more immediate goals. Little things add up, which is why Condition 4 says we need, in little things as well as in big things, we need a stubborn consistency in pursuing our vision, a determined persistence. Look at the word consistency for a second. 2 Latin root words. Sto stare steti, a verb that means to stand, con, a particle that means together. Do my actions stand together with my words? Do my emotions and attitudes stand together with my deepest beliefs and values? Do the people in my office stand together? Do the members of my family stand together, or are we pulling apart? Consistency is always about standing together. Now, I'm not talking about blindly repetitive behavior. Well, this is always the way we've done things around here. That's being stuck on Hill A. That's not what I'm talking about. When I talk about consistency as a condition for sustainable, satisfying success, I am talking about staying true to your highest goals and your deepest values. I'm talking about what the Chinese talked about. Chinese philosophers have a great image, moving water. When water comes across an obstacle, what does it do? It goes around it, goes over it, goes under it. What's stronger, water or stone? I used to ask my students at Notre Dame that question. They said, what do you mean? Stone is hard and massive and dense, and water is just liquid. Dripping water goes through stone. You know what Chinese philosophers say? Be like water. When circumstances change sufficiently, that liquid becomes a solid. When circumstances change in a very different way, it becomes a vapor. But it never abandons its essential nature. That's why the Chinese say, be like water. That's the kind of consistency we're talking about here. True to yourself, true to your values, true to your beliefs, but flexible and adaptive as circumstances change. Inconsistency, the number one cause of failure in our time. Self-imposed self-sabotage. People acting inconsistently with their own highest goals and deepest values. Why would anybody act inconsistently with their own goals and values? Distraction, diversion, greed, temptation, pressure. There's so many causes. Usually we trip and fall, we pick ourselves back up. I got a call from a big service organization one day. Professor, we got a problem. We need your help. What's the problem? Persistent inconsistency, the administrator said. I've never even heard that. What do you mean? We got vice presidents at war with each other. We got managers undermining each other. We got people acting contrary to our strategic plan, to our mission statement, to our values. We're going to come apart unless we can figure out what is keeping people acting in an inconsistent way. We can't turn it around until we can understand it. Could you figure it out for us? I didn't know any of the great philosophers who actually had addressed this, so I had to use my secret weapon as a philosopher. I stared out the window for 3 days, and I came up with the answer. I recommend window staring, as a matter of fact. Stare out the window, make your mind a blank. It's amazing what can percolate to the surface. We stay so busy, so distracted, we never give ourselves a chance to just be calm and let ideas come to us. In 3 days, I was able to come up with the answer for this company. There are 3 causes of persistent inconsistency. The number one cause, Socrates hammered on all the time, ignorance. A failure to think through the consequences of our actions. We're running to the edge of the cliff and we're not slowing down because we don't see it coming. McNamara, in his first book on the Vietnam War, said, in Vietnam, our biggest problem was failure to think through the consequences of our decisions. Stephen Carter, in a book called Integrity, said the most important aspect of ethics is thinking through the consequences of our actions. That's the number one cause in our time, ignorance. Of persistently inconsistent behavior. It wasn't their cause, though. They knew what was going on. They understood it. What else could it be? Number 2, indifference. Oh, I got to tell you something about these. And let's keep this one up for a second here, this PowerPoint, because I got to tell you something about this. For 8 summers, I directed seminars for the National Endowment for the Humanities, bringing 15 of the best school teachers in America to live with me for a month. I'd be their only professor. They'd be my only students for 1 month at Notre Dame. It was an amazing thing. Illinois Teacher of the Year, Hawaii Teacher of the Year, just incredible people. Kindergarten teachers, high school teachers. We spent all day together every day for a month. They taught me so much about the classrooms of America. One seventh grade teacher told me about a seventh grade class of unruly underachievers. The teacher finally got sick of it one day, came into the classroom, wrote those 2 words on the board and called on the ringleader, Bob, what's the difference between ignorance and indifference? And Bob actually said, I don't know and I don't care. Absolutely right, Bob. She says, see what you can do when you set your mind to it. Ignorance is I don't know. Any teacher can deal with that. We provide information. It's the I don't care that's so much harder to reach. Did these people not care? They were worried. That's why they were calling me. Even though this is the second most common cause of self-destructive behavior continuing in a life, it wasn't theirs. Number 3 nailed it for these people. Once they understood it, they could defeat it. In 2 years, their president became an international spokesman for how to do things right in his industry. And we're going back 15 years ago when I had this phone call. And the president of this company is coming to see me next Sunday to spend the day with me. That's how much he values the wisdom of the ages as it's been reflected in his business. I'm so proud of him and what they were able to do. Once they understood it, they could turn it around. Their problem was inertia. In physics, the law that an object at rest tends to stay at rest, an object in motion tends to stay in motion. In human life, the weight of habit. We're stuck in a rut and can't get out, or we're on hill A and nobody wants to go downhill. Habit is the second strongest natural power in human life. Good thing there's a stronger natural power, the one Einstein discovered when he once said imagination is more important than knowledge. Once you get people's imaginations in gear, here's where we're going. Here's where we need to be. If you get their imaginations in gear, here's how medieval philosophers explained how it worked. They said the imagination engages the emotions, and in this life, it's the emotions that move the will. Y'all know that, don't you? Working with clients, working with associates. If you get people's emotions involved, if you appeal to their imagination, which grabs their emotions, then people can do anything. It's really, really astonishing. The power of the imagination, the power of the emotions, the power to break down the ruts of habit and do something new. That's why our 5th condition for success says, yes, emotion is very important. We need an emotional commitment to the importance of what we're doing. We need passion. We need enthusiasm. I love it that Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, in his book he wrote a few years ago on the founding and developing of Starbucks coffee, his title, I love his title, Pour Your Heart Into It. Pour your heart into it. I learned this in the strangest way from the Notre Dame football team. Y'all remember Father Ted Hesburgh as president of Notre Dame? He's one of the longest serving university presidents in the history of our country. 35 years, I believe it was. He gave me his last teaching award he ever gave out as a president. I was so proud. I said, Father Ted, I heard that when you hired me, you said Tom Morris is the last guy I'll ever give a teaching award to, and it came true tonight. Thank you very much. He was surprised. I was surprised. Not as surprised as I was 2 months later, when the new academic year started up. I walked into Philosophy 101 early, first day of class, to watch the students walk in. There were more big people coming to philosophy class than I'd ever seen before. Freshmen, 6 feet 8 inches tall, 285 pounds, coming into philosophy class. I called the athletic department for the first time in my career. How many varsity athletes do I have this semester? You have 55 varsity athletes in Philosophy 101. Do I suddenly have a reputation I do not want to have? No, Professor, we don't put our athletes in easy classes. We have a very different policy from that at Notre Dame. What's your policy? We put as many of our athletes as possible in classes with faculty members who've won teaching awards, hoping those professors will get them as excited about their academics as they are about their athletics. I said, I'm proud to be at a place that works like that. Then I said, give me all your athletes and I'll turn them into philosophers. Yeah, let me tell you what I learned real fast. 3 exams and 5 essay papers. First exam out of 300 freshmen, 400 freshmen, we usually have 8 or 9 Fs. You know the old scale, 0 to 100, 60 or below, F, failure. That semester on the first exam, we didn't look at 8 or 9 Fs. We saw 48 Fs. Of the 31 freshman football players at Notre Dame that year, I had 29 in class. Of the 29, 26 failed my first exam with scores I had never personally witnessed in all my years of teaching. They were making total exam scores of 7, 9, 13, 21. I said, these are jersey numbers, not exam scores. One guy worked for an hour and made a 0. I had never seen that in my entire career. There's a point somewhere, for crying out loud. The offensive tackle got one. I mean, what? I can't lose this many people. But, philosophy is what it is. I'm not going to lower my standards. I mean, I lecture on Monday, Wednesday, discussion groups are on Friday. I'll have review sessions Thursday. Well, it's got to be Thursday night if you want the football players there. Well, I want the football players there. Why does it have to be Thursday night? Well, they practice from 4 till 8 p.m. Then they eat dinner, so it had to be 9 o'clock at night. I wanted to be with my family at 9 o'clock at night, but I cared about these students. I was committed to my students, so I dragged my carcass back to campus at 9 o'clock Thursday night, and I'd preach about hard work and self-discipline and the lectures of the week. And you know what? The first Thursday, 100 students came. And all the coaches came of every sport who had athletes in my class. All the coaches lined the wall. I thought, this is unbelievable, making sure their players were there. The coaches stayed the entire hour. The coaches came back the second Thursday. The third Thursday, there were the coaches again. Halfway during the football season, you could walk down the sidelines in Notre Dame Stadium and hear the defensive backfield coach say something like, well, St. Thomas Aquinas said. I mean, these guys were becoming philosophers. Second exam, nobody failed. Nobody. People who made single digits are making C minuses. People making 20s and 30s are making B minuses. Even the guy who made the 0 pulled himself all the way up to a completely legitimate D. I had never been proud of a D before, but this guy convinced me D is for defense, so I should get used to it. What was F for football? I was starting to wonder. It took me half the semester to convince him F was not for philosophy. There's a knock on the door a week later. Professor, I'm an investigative reporter from the Chicago Tribune. Really? I hear you've got all the freshman football players in your big class. Well, I've got, 29 of them. I hear they all failed your first exam. Well, 26 of them did. Now I hear they're all of a sudden doing much better. Oh, greatest come from behind in Notre Dame football, never reported by Sports Illustrated. I am so proud of these kids. I said, he said, really? Really? He said, could I have a look at that second exam? Oh, he thought the professor was doing his part for the program. Maybe on that second exam, he's going to see philosophical questions like discuss the nature of the good in the phrase, good tackle. Maybe I'm making it relevant somehow. He reads the first 2 questions of the exam. You should have seen this guy's face. Present 2 versions of Anselm's ontological argument for the existence of God. Give 3 of David Hume's critiques of the teleological argument. Football players can read these questions, he said. I said, man, they can nail the answers. These are the future philosophers of the NFL. If on Super Bowl Sunday, any day in the future, you see anybody in the huddle in the thinker pose, they've been in my class. How do you teach football players stuff like this? I said, hey, man, I asked the offensive center, how'd you guys turn it around? He said, it was you, Professor. I didn't make things easy. No, you came in Thursday night when you didn't have to. You showed us you cared about us. You showed us you were committed to us, and that was contagious, Professor. We started caring about you, and we got committed to what you were trying to do for us. That's all it took. You know what? That's all it almost ever takes. People are attracted to people who care. If you show up on your version of Thursday night when you don't have to, you show your commitment, you show your passion, man, people want to plug into that energy like moths to a flame, like iron filings to a magnet. People are attracted to people who care. As a matter of fact, it was Thursday night discussion group that I first presented the 7 C's of success that we're talking about this morning. That was the year I was discovering these things. I thought the football players needed a little more success in the classroom. I'm going to teach them the 7 C's. It was the end of the fall semester. I introduced them to the 7 C's of success, hoping they'd use them in the classroom. I had no idea they were going to use them on the football field, where the very next season, they were the sophomore core of the team that won the national championship of 1988. I mean, I was so proud of these kids. Chris Zorich, who went to the Chicago Bears and then to law school. Ricky Waters, who once set a record for Super Bowl touchdowns. All these great athletes who became philosophers, they said, because I cared so much for them. And that's something, my concern for them, my commitment to them. And now when I saw a couple years ago, my student Rodney Culver put on his Super Bowl ring, I think to myself, these guys are successes, so many of them in their personal lives lives, in their communities, as well as on the field. This is the universality of what we're talking about. Some people say to me, yeah, but I'm not working with Super Bowl champions of the future. It's emotional fireworks don't go off in my office. It's the same, phone calls and paperwork. Let me share with you a principle, a cosmic principle I call the dual significance principle. Every job productive of any good can be given a trivial description or a noble description. Ultimate motivation requires that we carry in our own minds the noblest possible conception of what we do. Y'all, the noblest guy I knew at Notre Dame was a janitor. In the faculty office building for the humanities, in 300 PhDs, he was the one guy who didn't finish high school. And Brother Jeff, I write about him in a book called If Aristotle Ran General Motors. Brother Jeff was the epitome of nobility and spirituality in the workplace. When any of these 300 PhDs had a career disappointment, marital troubles, problems with the kids, they'd go looking for Brother Jeff to have a conversation. They'd seek him out. But he was a custodian. He swept the floors. He emptied trash cans. He cleaned the toilets and the windows, for crying out loud. In his mind, he was a custodian of souls. You know what he thought his job was? To create conditions for greatness. A 2-minute conversation with this man could change your day. And I remember thinking to myself one day, we could all do that for other people. Bring that noble conception and never let the people who work with you forget the impact you're having on families, on individuals, on the community. Never let people forget the big picture. That nobility will carry you through and will take you. Number 6 is a lot easier. When you are working with a sense of nobility, number 6, we need a good character to guide us and keep us on proper course. When I talked about this one back 10 years ago, people used to say to me, can a bad character have flamboyant success? I'd say, yeah, for a while. If you measure it only in a couple of ways, in a limited domain, at the expense of what really counts in life. Unethical success is always self-destructive. Always self-destructive. Emerson, 150 years ago, our last public philosopher, Ralph Waldo Emerson, wrote an essay on Napoleon. Go into any big bookstore, pick up the portable Emerson, his essays, turn to the one about Napoleon. Unbelievable. Napoleon was one of the great intellects of our time. Napoleon could set goals like nobody else. He could eliminate any obstacle that stood between himself and his goals. He could motivate people on a massive scale. Too bad he's a liar, a cheat, and totally untrustworthy, on account of which all his efforts dissipated like the smoke from his artillery, leaving France worse off than it was when he started. Like every other experiment in unethical success in all of human history, it bore within itself the seeds of its own destruction. Don't you wish people had gotten the lesson, the message 150 years ago? Our headlines would have been real different over the last 10, 20 years, wouldn't they? I mean, it's unbelievable. Aristotle said, what keeps the world going? You know what his answer was? Salesmanship. Really? Rhetoric. The Greek word for persuasiveness, the ability to convince another person to enter a joint project that is of mutual benefit, without which life would be a war of every person against every other person, as Thomas Hobbes were later to speculate. Aristotle said, I got to figure out what it takes for world-class salesmanship. He said 3 things: logos, pathos, ethos. I decided to bring you the Greek words transliterated into English letters because they're so interesting. Logos, from which we get logic. You better understand what you're talking about. You better know your stuff. You better be a master of information. You better have thought through the logical implications of what you're trying to convince another person to do. Then you become credible, authoritative, persuasive. But people aren't logic machines. You need to be a master of pathos, passion. My dad would say to me, hey, Tom, if I don't know my clients well, he had a real estate business. If I don't know my clients on an emotional level, their loves and fears, their hopes and dreams, what keeps them awake at night, if I don't know them like that, I can't really do great things with them. But if I get to know their emotional life, we can always do great things together. When my dad made a recommendation to people, you know what they said to themselves? First of all, this is coming from a guy who knows what he's talking about. He was a master of logos. But secondly, this is coming from a guy who understands me. It made him very, very persuasive. But my dad and Aristotle taught me ethos is the foundation from which we get ethics. In Greek, it was the word for character. People are persuaded by people they trust, Aristotle said. Character is the foundation. My father passed away way too young, at the age of 69. Days after his death, I was running errands in his Chateau Realty vehicle. People stopped me all over Durham, North Carolina. Your daddy was a man of character. Your father was somebody I could always trust. I want you to know that. Your dad was the last gentleman in the neighborhood. Your daddy was a good man. I thought, is this the way people are going to talk about me when I'm gone? If not, I'm not doing the most I can for him while I'm here. My dad's ethics were the core of his success his entire career. It was hard for me to lose my dad. He was my first philosophy teacher. He didn't go to college, but my house growing up was full of books on philosophy by Seneca and Marcus Aurelius and Plato and Aristotle. Isn't it interesting? I became a philosopher. You know, and Socrates had a young man hang around with him every day named Plato. Plato had a shadow follow him everywhere he went named Aristotle. Wait, Socrates taught Plato? Plato taught Aristotle? Aristotle taught somebody pretty important too. You know who it was? Alexander the Great. When he was just Alexander the Average, when he was a teenager, you know, but he became great through association with greatness. You all be mentors of ethical success for everybody around you. You can have an extraordinary impact, and you'll make number 7 a lot easier. We need a capacity to enjoy the process along the way. There's something to, you know what? Some people say, I can't enjoy the process. Every day is a minefield. It's a pressure cooker. It's a steamroller. You know what? Is it the course or is it what we bring to the course that counts? The Stoic philosophers have taught me you can find something to enjoy each and every day. You can find something to relish, some small thing to enjoy, some small thing that will relax you, that will make you calmer, that will give you the ability. Look at what we've talked about. The Greeks said, know thyself. I wish like crazy they had said, enjoy thyself, because when you enjoy the process, goal setting isn't so hard. Confidence building isn't such a challenge. The focus, concentration will be there. The consistency will flow. The emotional commitment, all these things will fall into place. I brought y'all the card as a little gift today because I wanted you to be able to have with you the whole framework. Because most of the time we're doing 5 or 6 of these things pretty well, but we're slacking off on 1 or 2. It's a great diagnostic tool. It's a great teaching tool. And a top person in financial services, of all things, in New York City called me not too long ago. Tom, I'm calling you because for the first time in my life, my purse was stolen in Manhattan 2 days ago. I said, I was nowhere near Manhattan 2 days ago. She said, no. Of all the things I've got to replace, driver's license, Amex, Visa, insurance card, the most important thing is a laminated wallet card with the 7 C's of success you gave me 2 years ago in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I said, that's the most important thing? She said, Tom, I reread it every day. It's changed the way I do business. It's changed the way I live my life. I need a card. I said, I'm going to send you a box of cards. The great philosophers would be so proud of you using their ideas. And I want to tell y'all just one more thing about this. I was in Nassau, Bahamas, trying to leave on a Saturday. Have you ever tried to leave Nassau, Bahamas on a Saturday? Have you ever been there? It's like half the world's population is in the security line. I don't get, the airport is not big enough for the number of people. There's a security line of 1,000 people. My plane boards in 8 minutes. I look at my boarding pass, 8.5 minutes. There are 1,000 people. I tell the security, what should I do? She said, well, we would take you to the front of the line if we had somebody extra, but we're shorthanded today. We can't do anything. I said, well, can I do something? You can ask everyone in front of you if you can get in front of them. Logic 101, thank you very much. Otherwise, I'm not going to get home. Last flight out. Okay, excuse me, everybody. Can I have your attention? I do my little public service announcement. Security tells me I'm supposed to ask you, can I get in front of you? My plane boards in 8 minutes. Is it okay? Everybody's nodding their heads. I'm going down another 20 people, another 50 people. I'm asking everybody. Everybody's going like this. You know, I'm thinking these people are so nice. I forget like half the people don't speak English, but that's okay. They're letting me in front of them. I get to the front of the line. I've got 3 minutes to go. There's my plane. I'm going to make it. I think these people have done something so nice for me. I've got to do something for them. What can I do? What can I do? I have 1,000 laminated wallet cards in my carry-on luggage. I take it out, pass it to the guy behind me. Everybody who let me in front of them gets a laminated wallet card. What the great philosopher said it takes for success in anything we do. Pass it back. I'm feeling like a humanitarian, you know. And everybody's looking at the cards. They're going back and people say, what is this? Like it's radioactive. Like they don't even want to hold it. You know, what is this card? The guy behind me lifts his card up and says in a voice that 1,000 people can hear, the 7 C's of success. 1,000 heads turn and look at this guy. They must work. He got ahead of all of us. They do work, you all. True success to all of you all. Thank you so much for having me as your philosopher. Thank you all a lot. Thank you.